Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 367 and 368 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. It was as though Yang Shaoqing suddenly turned mad. He was laughing and crying at the same time. Several prison guards hurriedly put down what they were doing and ran over to hold him up. Yang Shaoqing yelled and struggled out of their grips, shrilly crying out, "Fake, you're all fake." He injured several guards and even killed a few in a row. Suddenly, his body stiffened like a wooden puppet, and he stood in place numbly as he looked at the bloodstains on both of his hands in a dazed manner. After a long time, he turned his head around with difficulty and asked Qin Mu, "Celestial Venerable Mu, is it real or fake this time?" Qin Mu sighed and said, "Left Assistant Minister, I intend to leave now, aren't you going to send me off?" The muscles on Yang Shaoqing's face twitched violently, and his expression was distorted. He followed behind Qin Mu and walked outside. After a short while, he sent Qin Mu and the others out of the prison. Qin Mu then turned around and smiled, saying, "Left Assistant Minister, there's no need to send me any further." Yang Shaoqing bowed and replied monotonously, "Farewell, Celestial Venerable." With a smile on his face, Qin Mu sat down slowly. Fiery clouds appeared beneath the dragon Chilin's feet, and he started to fly off with Qin Mu on his back. "Celestial Venerable Mu, is it reality, or an illusion right now?" Yang Shaoqing's voice traveled from behind them. Qin Mu patted the dragon Chilin on the head, and the dragon Chilin quickly stopped in his tracks. Qin Mu laughed and said, "When what is real is passed off as fake, then what is fake is also real. When nothingness is treated as something, something becomes nothing. Left Assistant Minister, you are the top practitioner of consciousness divine arts in the celestial heavens. What is real and what is fake, nothingness or something, is it really that important? Please return." Yang Shaoqing's body trembled slightly, and he raised his head to look at him. The dragon Chilin flew into the distance with Qin Mu. The corners of Yang Shaoqing's eyes jumped, and he saw that Qin Mu's shadow on the dragon Chilin's head was squirming, and then the shadow split into 3 shadows. He felt his head exploding, and he immediately sprinted back into the prison, running as though he was flying as he moved towards the cages that had imprisoned Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng. He stood there blankly, looking at the 2 empty cages. Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were both missing from their cages. I see. Yang Shaoqing chuckled softly. "So it was me who taught you how to undo the seals on the cages. So it's not a dream right now, and it's also not an illusion of consciousness. When what is real is passed off as fake, then what is fake is also real. When nothingness is treated as something, something becomes nothing. Good move, good move." Suddenly, a prison guard passed by, and upon noticing the empty cages, he screamed out shrilly, "The criminals have escaped." Yang Shaoqing turned around to look at him and said with a slight smile, "The criminals are clearly still in their cages. How have they escaped?" The guard was taken aback, and he turned to look at the cage again. Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor were really still within their cages. The guard revealed a perplexed expression, and Yang Shaoqing said, "Don't make a fuss out of nothing. Go and do your work." "Wait, how long did Celestial Venerable Mu's visit last?" The prison guard replied, "No more than 15 minutes. No more than 15 minutes. Yang Shaoqing felt his heart sank. To him, it felt as if it had been a few months. He waved his hand and let the guard leave. Yang Shaoqing walked out slowly, his limbs were chilly, and he thought to himself, "You managed to help Emperor Yangfeng and Jiang Baigui escape, but I have no other choice but to help you cover your tracks. With my consciousness divine art, even if the celestial heavens send people down to inspect, as long as they aren't existences at the Emperor's throne realm, then they won't be able to tell that the Jiang Baigui and Emperor Yang Feng within the cages are merely products of my spirit illusions. You are aware that I won't chase you to get Emperor Yang Feng and Jiang Baigui back, because you know I am unable to break through your divine art. Even if I manage to catch up with you, I will only fall into your illusions and dreams once again. You also know that I will help you cover it up, because I have already been escorted up to the God execution stage once. To protect my own life, I have to help you cover it up. You even purposefully gave yourself away, by transforming your shadow into 3 shadows. The other 2 shadows are Emperor Yang Feng and Jiang Baigui, right? Celestial Venerable Mu, our Celestial Venerable Mu, you have become so terrifying. He went to the Judgment Throne Hall and opened up his official records, writing, "Nothing amiss occurred," during Celestial Venerable Mu's prison visit. He put down his brush and sat lost in thought. Suddenly, he gripped his fists tightly, his fingernails piercing into his palms until they started to bleed. Then, he released his grip weakly and laughed bitterly before continuing to do his official work. I was defeated, but your consciousness divine art isn't invincible. Your level of cultivation is low, so it's only too easy to break through your divine art. As long as an external party interferes with it, your divine art will unravel on its own. Also, your divine art can only last for less than a fraction of an hour. Aren't you intending to go to the celestial heavens? If you execute this divine art in the celestial heavens, then without a doubt, you will die. However, he stopped writing, and an expression of fear crept onto his face as chills ran down his spine. However, if you cultivate to the Emperor's throne realm, merging consciousness divine arts, the Boundless Calamity Sutra, and the Great Tao of Yudu, then that would be too terrifying. He dared not imagine just how horrifying that would be. He continued to write his official records, when the tip of his brush suddenly froze in place, and the corners of his eyes trembled. How do I know whether the current me has really escaped from his dream illusions? Yang Shaoqing's pupils dilated. What if, right now, I'm still in an illusion? Right now, am I in a dream, or am I in the real world? Helplessness was reflected in his eyes. Could it be, as he said, that I have to cripple my own divine bridge, divine treasure, and accept the reforms of eternal peace to completely be free from his dream illusions? If that's the case, how would I be any different from those rebels of eternal peace? The look of fear on his face intensified. Although Qin Mu was gone and the divine art had stopped, the after effects caused by the consciousness divine art had started to take root and grow inside his heart like a seed formed by devilish nature. Yang Shaoqing knew that he had to walk out of this, and that he had to cripple his divine bridge, divine treasure, and accept the reforms of eternal peace, cultivating the celestial river divine treasure. Otherwise, he would be plagued forever, unable to distinguish between dreams, reality, and illusions. The flaws in his Tao heart would make it impossible for him to cultivate to the Emperor's throne. However, the celestial heavens strictly forbade reforms. If he accepted the celestial river divine treasure, then he would become one of the criminals of the reform. Crippling the divine bridge divine treasure, my celestial palace will come crashing down, and then I will die. Jiang Baigui told me before that he created a technique to seal the southern heavenly gate. That way, I can cripple the divine bridge divine treasure and not die. Why did he tell me about this? Yang Shaoqing came to a sudden realization. The senior brother and junior brother joined forces to set a huge trap for me. A huge trap that is greatly interlinked. I need to go and learn about the reforms of eternal peace, secretly go and learn about it. I won't participate in the reforms of eternal peace. I'm only going to secretly learn about it. Far away from the prison, Qin Mu had the dragon Qilin stop flying. He smiled and said, Yang Shaoqing didn't chase after us, so the rescue mission has concluded successfully. You guys can come out now. Yang Shaoqing is a smart man, he will use his consciousness divine art to help us cover everything up. No one will know that you have already escaped the prison. There were 3 shadows at his feet. 2 of them wiggled and stood upright, and then gradually transformed into Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and Emperor Yang Feng. Emperor Yang Feng breathed in the fresh air greedily. He still couldn't believe it as he murmured, "I actually managed to come out alive. I had thought that I might just die in there." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor bowed towards Qin Mu. "Thank you, senior brother, for saving us." Qin Mu hurriedly bowed back and smiled. "If you didn't impart the 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness to him, I wouldn't have been able to so easily find the flaws in his techniques, and plant the devil's seed within his Tao heart. In order to let this 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness Emperor's throne technique catch up with the times, we exhausted considerable manpower and brains researching the flaws of this technique." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor replied solemnly, "But to restrain him to such an extent isn't that easy a feat. I entered the dreams using Brahma Buddha's Boundless Calamity Sutra, and in a short span of time, I managed to consider the countless possibilities that may occur, and find the easiest method to counter him. Then, I used the great Tao of Yudu to plant the devil seed within his Tao heart. Within his Tao heart, the devil flower bloomed, and it caused him to fall into the dreams and illusions." Qin Mu continued, "My divine art invaded through his Tao heart, and planted itself within his divine treasure. After that, escaping the dreamscape and illusions that I created for him became too difficult. Every time he tried to force his way out of the illusions, he was actually falling even deeper into the dreamscape. The more he broke through my consciousness divine art, the deeper he was actually falling into the boundless calamities, experiencing calamities again and again." Emperor Yang Feng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor both exclaimed in admiration. The Boundless Calamity Sutra was Brahma Buddha's true scripture of the Emperor's throne, the undying God consciousness was Crimson Emperor's throne technique, and planting a devil seed in the Tao heart was a technique from Saint Woodcutter's great educational Heavenly Devil scriptures. Qin Mu had merged these 3 techniques, and using Eternal Peace's reforms as a catalyst, he was actually able to trap a terrifying existence at the numinous sky realm. His abilities were truly exceptional. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's gaze flickered. Yang Shaoqing could possibly become our Tao friend in the future. I have already pointed out a path for him. Now, it's up to him whether or not he will walk this path. Even though the 2 of you are free now, you can't reveal your original appearances to people. You both have to change your entire appearance, Qin Mu reminded them. Emperor Yang Feng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded. The both of them had cultivated the 2 pinnacle creations of the technique of creation, 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness, and Anusrava creation mysterious scripture. Thus, changing their appearances and even changing the structure of their primordial spirits was child's play to them. Qin Mu took out a mirror and handed it over to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Within this mirror is the research results gathered by the celestial heavens over millions of years regarding the ancient gods. Tao Ancestor gave it to me. The celestial heavens also used the knowledge from this to create weapons like Celestial Venerable You. You should go and study it properly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor inspected it carefully. Within the mirror hid an entire world, and it was filled with countless jade scrolls that had all kinds of runes imprinted on them. If you hand this to us, what about yourself? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked. I forged this mirror, so I can forge as many as I want to. Qin Mu flipped his palm and took out another mirror. He smiled and said, when 2 identical mirrors reflect each other, the jade scrolls can be imprinted into the other mirror. I still have several mirrors on me, so you don't have to worry about me. Let's part ways here. He bowed towards them. I'm going to head to the celestial heavens, and I don't know when I will be able to return. I made an agreement with Emperor Yanxiu that I would return to meet her in 1 year's time. If the two of you are going back to eternal peace, please help me inform her that I am safe and sound. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked, You aren't going back? Are you really going to the celestial heavens? Qin Mu smiled. I would like to see for myself if the celestial heavens have any weaknesses. If one knows himself and his enemy, he can win all of his battles. If I don't go to the celestial heavens, I won't know the true situation. Therefore, I must go. Emperor Yangfeng suddenly asked, Have you married Yuxiu? Are you her empress now? Qin Mu's face turned red, and he hurriedly waved his hands. Why is your majesty saying things like that? We are innocent. Emperor Yangfeng spat and sneered, saying, I, as the old man of Emperor Yanxiu, don't wish for the both of you to be innocent. You rascal, I'm just worried that you can't get a wife. It's not like I'm trying to sell my daughter to you. Do you have to look so fearful? I won't kill you. You are no different from Imperial Preceptor, as both of you remained single through your own abilities. If back then, I hadn't rewarded Imperial Preceptor with a wife, he would still be a lonely old man. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor coughed and reminded him, Your Majesty, we should be on our way. Emperor Yangfeng sighed. I am no longer the Emperor, Yuxiu is the Emperor. You are also no longer the Imperial Preceptor. I wonder which scumbag is now Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. Qin Mu said, That scumbag is right in front of you, and that scumbag also just saved your lives. Emperor Yangfeng laughed out loud and waved his hands to bid farewell. Qin Mu was in high spirits, and he yelled, Fatty dragon, let's go. Emperor Yangfeng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor watched as he left. After some time, Emperor Yangfeng had already transformed into a new physical appearance. He said, Yuxiu becoming Emperor and him becoming Imperial Preceptor. Fate truly makes fools out of all of us. I had initially hoped for the two of them to get together. Actually, didn't your Majesty already consider this outcome? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor also had a new face now. He walked towards the east and continued calmly, We planned for this a long time ago, that if the reforms were to fail and the both of us were to die, there had to be someone to inherit our unfulfilled legacy. The ones that your Majesty chose were exactly Emperor Yanxiu and Cult Master Qin. Emperor Yangfeng caught up with him. After a moment of silence, he replied, Back then, I was the Emperor, I didn't consider Yuxiu's happiness. I only wanted her to inherit our work. Now, I'm not the Emperor but a father, so I no longer wish for her to carry this burden. I only hope that she can find an ideal husband and live out a peaceful and blissful life. Her becoming Emperor means that the possibility of her getting together with Qin Mu is close to zero. This brat would never be her Empress, and the Emperor definitely can't be married off. The both of them. He shook his head and didn't speak further. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor understood the meaning behind his words. Ling Yuxiu inheriting the throne to become Emperor Yanxiu, and Qin Mu becoming the new Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor meant that the two of them no longer had a chance at getting together. Ling Yuxiu should have been aware of this outcome when she inherited the position, but she still accepted the throne. When Qin Mu agreed to be her Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, he too was aware of this outcome, but he still became her Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. The two of them had given up some of the feelings within their hearts quietly, but neither of them had ever mentioned it. West Earth. A huge city dashed past in front of Qin Mu. He was stumped and quickly shouted, Are you Sister He? The city slowed down. At the top of the city stood a few gods, and they popped out their heads and said, This is the carriage of White Deity City, not your so-called sister. Who are you? Qin Mu said, Celestial Venerable Mu. May I ask whether High Heavens Academy has returned under White Deity? A god at the top of the city said, High Heavens Academy. Are you referring to High Heavens? That power isn't under White Deity City. There is someone called Qi Jiui over there, a disciple of Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu. Red Deity negotiated with White Deity, agreeing to split West Earth between them. Red Deity also gave half of South Earth to White Deity. Who did you say you are? Celestial Venerable Mu. Qin Mu smiled. Those gods came to their senses and looked at each other, speechless. Qin Mu asked, in that case, how do I get to High Heavens Academy? Those gods talked for some time before one of them said, Celestial Venerable, please look over there where the heaven is pale green. That is the High Heavens. When you get there, you can ask for the exact location of High Heavens Academy. Qin Mu gave his thanks, as the dragon Qilin headed in the direction of the High Heavens. He said, I used to think the High Heavens was a mysterious place, supervising all movements in the great ruins and eternal peace. Now I realize that it's just one of the primordial realm's many heavens, not amounting to anything significant. The dragon Qilin said, Cult Master, you used to be a small divine arts practitioner, thinking that the High Heavens was a gigantic, terrifying creature. Now that you are Celestial Venerable Mu, High Heavens is nothing much to you. Qin Mu laughed. Fatty Dragon is getting wiser. You have grown too. Those gods watched them as they left, then faced each other blankly. A god asked, Celestial Venerable Mu has arrived at West Earth of the primordial realm. Should we notify White Deity City? He's going towards Red Deity. If our White Deity City's strong practitioners intercept him midway, wouldn't we offend Red Deity? An older-looking god maturely said, moreover, he is a Celestial Venerable. Who dares to touch him? Just let him be. Those gods agreed, and the huge city started moving again, dashing off as thick smoke rolled. Over the course of his journey, Qin Mu had met many of these flying cities on land. They were fast and were used as transportation by the gods and devils of West Earth to move about quickly. They served as a convenient way to transport armies around to quell rebellions. This is the spell of True Heaven Palace. However, True Heaven Palace came from the extraterritorial celestial heavens. Qin Mu lowered his voice. True Heaven Old Mother is a true god of the extraterritorial celestial heavens. She is now likely to be under White Deity. Because West Earth had High Heavens and True Heaven Palace, the flames of war they experienced weren't as horrifying as eternal peace. Here, people could still maintain their basic living needs. When Qin Mu arrived at the territory of Red Deity, he discovered it was better governed than White Deity's territory. Here, the people of West Earth lived and worked in peace, no different from the past. Some of the little girls saw him and unexpectedly recognized him, so they took the initiative to call out to him. High Heavens Academy is gone, there is only the High Heavens Divine Sect. The sect master is Shenghua, who used to be the Grand Chancellor of High Heavens Academy. Those girls told him, as for Qi Jiui, he is doing even better. He holds the sect master of the High Heavens Divine Sect in disdain. Now, he lives within the temporary imperial residence of Red Deity. He is a young master of West Earth, controlling half of West Earth's gods and devils, very impressive. The dragon Qilin excitedly said, Qi Jiui is my younger brother. Shenghua is indeed smart. He changed High Heavens Academy to High Heavens Divine Sect, hence transforming it into a sect. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration, when a man like him puts his mind to cultivation, he improves by leaps and bounds. When he puts his mind to feelings, he's extremely emotional. When he puts his mind to the ways of the world, he becomes a smooth and slick person. Compared to me, he isn't far behind. He bid farewell to the girls after learning the location of the High Heavens Divine Sect and Red Deity's temporary imperial residence, continuing on his way towards the High Heavens Divine Sect. The High Heavens Divine Sect was the High Heavens Academy of old, and it was situated beside Red Deity's temporary imperial residence. The temporary imperial residence was established in the sky, so the High Heavens Divine Sect was set up in the vicinity of the True Heaven Palace. After a few days, the dragon Qin arrived at the High Heavens Divine Sect. He immediately abandoned Qin Mu and charged towards Red Deity's temporary imperial residence in the sky. He exclaimed, "Cult Master, I'm going to visit my sworn brother. Be careful not to anger THG, or else he will roast and eat you." Qin Mu shouted. The dragon Qin shouted, "Don't worry, we have a pact of earth count. We won't ask to be born on the same day, but hope to die on the same day. Sister Yang, are you coming?" Yang immediately flew over and said, "Young master, I will accompany Fatty Dragon, in case he really ends up being eaten." Qin Mu shook his head as he arrived at the High Heavens Divine Sect. Shenghua immediately came forward to welcome him after hearing that he had come. "Cult Master, we haven't seen each other for a few years. You've lost a lot of weight. How is everything with eternal peace?" Qin Mu said, "It's difficult to explain in a few words. I came to see if you and West Earth had endured and survived. Seeing that you and the people of West Earth are safe, I can rest easy now. It's all thanks to THG. Without him, West Earth would have faced great calamity." Shenghua said, "Although West Earth has relationships with the High Heavens and True Heaven Palace, if the Celestial Heavens wanted to destroy West Earth, they wouldn't care about these relationships. THG is the disciple of Red Deity, and it's because of him stepping in that we managed to protect West Earth." Upon hearing about Red Deity Qin Mu fell silent. When the celestial heavens circled and suppressed him, Qin was among them. The four deities attacked together, forcing him into a desperate situation, giving him no other choice but to leave his elder brother. He had never spoken of the pain he endured when his soul was cut off. The pain was 100 times worse than a knife scraping one's bones. However, the most painful thing to him was that, after severing his soul, he had to leave his elder brother Qin Fengqing, forsaking their brotherhood and no longer being the son of Qin Hanjun and Princess Consort Shen. He was just a walking corpse. Red Deity Qin had played a part in all of this. Shenghua didn't know about his predicament, nor did he know the amount of pain and suffering he had endured. The people of West Earth also didn't know about the pain endured by Eternal Peace. This calamity had withered Eternal Peace's population from over 10 billion to a few billion. Some died when they were trying to escape, and many were captured by gods and devils to be eaten. Others were harmed by demons and monsters, and even more of them were taken as slaves. The survival rate was 1 out of 10. This was the situation Eternal Peace was facing at the moment. An incredibly prosperous and thriving country was now on the verge of annihilation. Moreover, this was the result after Eternal Peace's divine arts practitioners and gods tirelessly fought back, trying to save the people. If they didn't, the death toll of Eternal Peace would be much higher. Those who survived would become livestock held captive in pens, waiting to become slaves or be eaten. This was why Qin Mu showed up at Eternal Peace's capital city, to resist Green Deity of the Eastern Sky and the ancient Celestial Emperor. He had to use his name as Celestial Venerable Mu. If he hadn't, what awaited Eternal Peace wouldn't just be a catastrophic disaster. "I came to visit you, because I planned to leave the primordial realm and head towards the celestial heavens to help Eternal Peace find a path of survival." Qin Mu smiled. "You didn't return to Eternal Peace over these years. Paths have been cut off, and news hasn't been communicated. You haven't been in touch with the results of Eternal Peace's reform. Before the disaster, I traveled to various academies to master the result of Eternal Peace's reform. I don't know whether I will survive my trip, so I wish to impart the results of Eternal Peace's reform to you." Shenghua was stunned and smiled faintly. The celestial heavens. Let me come with you. Qin Mu was touched, but he shook his head. You can't go. The reform of eternal peace can't be wiped out. If I am killed in the celestial heavens, at least you will be around to continue the reform. Although your overlord body is beta, it's only slightly inferior to me. If eternal peace has you, we will still be able to pass down our wisdom. Shenghua wanted to say more, but Qin Mu bowed to the ground and said, Dao friend, please. Shenghua quickly helped him up and said, I won't go with you, but you have to be careful. Qin Mu revealed a smile. I will be careful. Brother Shu, do you still remember the bet we made in the past? Whoever solves the problem of opening up the seventh divine treasure will be the alpha. Shenghua smiled faintly. What a coincidence. Not long after you left, I managed to comprehend many different methods of opening up the seventh divine treasure. Finally, I chose the best one. All along, I have been waiting for you. Unexpectedly, calamities descended upon us, severing our connection with eternal peace. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes and said, Let's write out our solutions to opening the seventh divine treasure, and see whose is better. Shenghua agreed. They both turned away, and started writing down their solutions. Following this, they turned back to face each other again at the same time. Qin Mu wrote, Celestial River Divine Treasure, while Shenghua wrote, Surging River Divine Treasure. The Celestial River was the surging river, so there was nothing wrong with Shenghua putting down, Surging River Divine Treasure. They both stared at each other, and Qin Mu said resentfully, I am sure that I opened up the Celestial River Divine Treasure before you. When I opened up the Celestial River Divine Treasure, strange meteorological phenomena occurred. Shenghua said, When I opened up the Surging River Divine Treasure, I faintly felt discernible ripples in the great Tao of heaven and earth as the Tao changed. Although it was faint, changes in the great Tao are unable to escape my observation. Qin Mu's heart jumped. When he was opening up the Celestial River Divine Treasure, he didn't feel a change in the great Tao of heaven and earth. This showed very clearly that Shenghua had opened up the Surging River Divine Treasure before him. Back then, I experimented with over 20 types of divine treasures, one by one, looking for the best divine treasure. This took up a lot of time. This fellow Shenghua actually chose the most optimal one, and didn't experiment with other divine treasures. Qin Mu finally understood why he was slower. His expression didn't change, and he smiled. It is likely that we both opened up our treasures at the same time. When I opened up the Celestial River Divine Treasure, the strange phenomena was very frightening. This time, it shall be considered a draw. Let's compete again in the future. Shenghua smiled faintly and didn't argue with him. He said to Jing Yang, who had hurried over, Dear Cult Master Qin, and I need to cultivate in seclusion for a while. During this period, we will need you to send us our meals. However, for other matters, there is no need to disturb us. Qin Mu bowed. Sorry for troubling sister-in-law. Jing Yang smiled. It's not difficult to send over meals. Please don't overexert yourselves. Don't worry, sister-in-law, I will take care of your husband. They then walked into a large palace hall. As Shenghua gestured with his hands, countless runes flowed down from the top of the hall like light streams. It was as though the hall was being covered by a giant bell, effectively sealing the hall. He said, Jing Yang knows my divine art, and is the only one who is able to get in. Cult Master Qin, you can begin to impart. Qin Mu yawned and smiled. I will impart everything to you in my dreams. After he said this, he laid down on his side and fell into a deep sleep. Shenghua was shocked and laughed. Is this the technique of Brahma Buddha? I have long heard about it, but I haven't seen it before. He laid down beside Qin Mu and was soundly asleep after a while. The darkness in front of Shenghua was like a curtain. When it was pulled from left to right, bright and beautiful sunlight shone through. Shenghua raised his hand to block the piercing light rays, putting down his hands only after his eyes adapted. He walked through this radiant world and saw Qin Mu walking towards him, smiling. Brother Shu is here. We can start to impart then. Us? Shenghua was stunned when he saw many Qin Mus walking over, and soon, there were over 100 Qin Mus. Behind them was a bustling scene, with many more Qin Mus gathering into a bunch. They were sitting down at their desks and writing energetically, penning down the results of Eternal Peace's reform. Shenghua was astonished and cried out, asking, "How long will this take?" "It took me 2 to 3 years to master around 70% of the results of Eternal Peace's reform." One of the Qin Mus raised his head and said, "You would also need 2 to 3 years. However, in my dream, you only need to catch a few winks. Let's begin." Shenghua began to focus, putting his heart into learning. In the meantime, Jing Yang came with their meals. She walked into the hall and saw the two of them lying on the floor, sleeping soundly. She couldn't help but shake her head as she placed a food basket beside them and left quietly. Qin Mu and Shenghua woke up, their stomachs rumbling with hunger. They quickly consumed their food. After, Qin Mu wanted to wash the dishes. Shenghua didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and he said, "Cult master, there's no need to force yourself. Put the tableware inside the basket, and my wife will come and collect them. Let's continue with our dreams." Qin Mu nodded. They laid down. However, Shenghua got up after a while and said, "I'm unable to sleep if I don't wash the dishes. Come, let's wash them." Qin Mu was unable to enter his dream as well, and he immediately got up and laughed. "I'm also unable to sleep. My mind will usually be restless if I don't wash the dishes." They created clear water using the art of creation and washed the dishes. Shenghua also mopped the floor of the large hall until it was clean. They could finally sleep after putting their minds to rest. I have no idea how Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng managed to spend their days in the Great Prison. It was so dirty, Qin Mu mumbled as he gradually started snoring. Within the dream world, Shenghua finally finished learning the results of the reform. Time seemed to slow down in the dream, and he felt like 2 to 3 years had passed and was really exhausted. However, the truth was, they had only woken up to eat a few times. Nevertheless, Qin Mu's dream world didn't collapse. Shenghua was bewildered. He saw Qin Mu take out a mirror and place it upright, and the mirror surface grew as it projected out countless jade scrolls. Shenghua went forward and observed it for a while, then said doubtfully, "The runes of the Great Tao of the ancient gods. These are the runes of Great Tao analyzed using classic algebra. Since you have these runes, it means that you have already recalculated using the computation canon of supreme molecule." He tilted his head sideways, thinking. Was the celestial venerable you that descended to the lower bound that day constructed by the celestial heavens using runes of classic algebra? Qin Mu said, "That's the strongest divine weapon created by the celestial heavens. It has the appearance of celestial venerable you, but those controlling it are the big shots of the heaven alliance of the celestial heavens. They can also build more of these weapons at any time." Shenghua walked among these jade scrolls. Their numbers were indeed plentiful. Although Qin Mu used the computational canon of supreme molecule to recalculate many jade scrolls, they were just a drop in the ocean. In the dream world, there were numerous Qin Mus calculating the runes of Great Tao on the jade scrolls, using the computational canon of supreme molecule to restructure them. Shenghua was shocked by the scale of this operation. However, he maintained a calm and steady composure, as though he wouldn't be alarmed even if the sky fell. Shenghua browsed through the jade scrolls and said, "The celestial heavens are experimenting with a perfect celestial heavens technique. This technique is able to unify all of the great Tao of the ancient gods. Building the strongest weapon isn't their aim. Creating a type of unity celestial heavens technique is." Qin Mu said, "Their celestial heavens technique is built on the foundation of the 7 great divine treasures, but the reform of the lower bound has changed the original 7 great divine treasures. Hence, they have to stop the reform at all costs, or else their millions of years of effort will be a joke." Shenghua said, "However, this weapon is too strong. It's impressive that the celestial heavens created such a weapon. It's comparable to the strongest and biggest ancient god's corporeal body, and when combined with the celestial heavens realm technique, there is no other power that will be able to compete with the celestial heavens. Not having the computational canon of supreme molecule is its only weakness. If the computational canon of supreme molecule is added..." He couldn't help but shiver. If the computational canon of supreme molecule was added, it would become the strongest corporeal body ever. Together with the celestial heavens technique, its abilities would be peerless. Even if the ancient celestial emperor was brought back to life, or if Heaven Duke and Earth Count joined forces, they wouldn't be its match by a huge margin. "Cult Master, are you really going to use the computational canon of supreme molecule to calculate one more time?" Shenghua suddenly said, "I feel terrified all of a sudden." Qin Mu glanced at him and revealed a puzzled expression. Shenghua said, "If this computational canon of supreme molecule falls into the hands of the celestial heavens, no one will be able to oppose them anymore. Even if it doesn't fall into their hands and remains in ours, I can't help but be terrified. I worry we may one day become the celestial heavens that we feared." Qin Mu was stunned, then he laughed. "We can't even take care of ourselves. Why worry about things that are so far out?" Shenghua was silent for a while before saying, "Cult Master Qin, the Heaven Alliance during the Dragon Han era was also a main force behind the reform, but they ended up being corrupted. If we manage to achieve power and status in the future, will we end up being corrupted like them? Are you sure that you will remain true to your original aspirations in the face of power and desires? Even if you are able to, can you guarantee that the rest of the people are like you?" Qin Mu raised his head and thought for a long time. Then, he shook his head, saying, "I can't guarantee that." Shenghua was quiet. Qin Mu patted him on the shoulder and laughed. "In the future, if we end up being corrupted, future generations will overthrow us. There's no need to worry too much." Shenghua argued, however, the paths, skills, and divine arts that combine classic algebra with supreme molecule algebra are already perfect beyond any doubt. Even if we end up corrupted in the future, no one will be able to overthrow us. We will control a power that is the strongest ever, one that will remain the strongest for countless billions of years. It'll be an easy feat to destroy those who rise up against us. We are building an even more hopeless future. It won't be more hopeless than now." Qin Mu said earnestly and gravely, "Brother Shu, today's celestial heavens believe they have created the strongest divine weapon, and have discovered the strongest technique. They believe that no one is able to overthrow them, allowing them to maintain their rule and territories forever. However, we found the computational canon of supreme molecule, and experienced the reform of eternal peace. Their strongest divine weapon and technique aren't peerless anymore. We now have a chance to overthrow them. Who knows whether, in the future, people will find a way that will reveal the many flaws that exist in our seemingly perfect divine arts techniques." He was full of confidence and laughed cheerfully. From the past to the present, paths, skills, and divine arts have been evolving and improving, with each generation surpassing the one before. What used to be perfect in the past was seen as full of flaws by the later generations. What was strongest in the past might not be the strongest in the future. Isn't this improvement? What we need to do is fulfill our philosophy and ambition. The path of the saint is none other than the everyday use of common people. Gods cannot be high and mighty, controlling the life and death of the people. Rather, they should be used by the people, bringing them benefits. Qin Mu tightened his fists. I strongly believe there will be a day where gods will work for people and service them. If they don't do that, there will be reformers overthrowing them. Brother Shu, my Tao friend and bosom friend, if we become corrupted, there will definitely be people overthrowing us. Shenghua calmed down and thought it through carefully. He felt that Qin Mu's words made sense. I don't know why, but when I'm around you, I am full of enthusiasm, filled with hope for the future, and not pessimistic anymore. Cult Master Qin, you are too good at bewitching the hearts of people. Qin Mu laughed. Is it not because we have a similar purpose and interests that we became Tao friends? You may have some confusion occasionally. All I did was help you walk out of that. Shenghua was stunned. Following which, he laughed loudly. He was usually expressionless, but today, he unexpectedly roared with laughter. It was a rare sight. Qin Mu had finished imparting what he had comprehended to him, so he said, Emperor Yangfeng, an imperial preceptor, are also researching the runes of the ancient gods' great Tao, and Tao Master Lin Xian has made more developments in this area. There is a chance that they come forth to find you. Shenghua nodded slightly. Qin Mu also narrated the incident of Celestial Venerable Yu opening up the Spirit Embryo Divine Treasure, and Galaxy Divine Treasure, talking about how his spirit embryo performed the groundbreaking feat of birthing a new soul. Shenghua was impressed, but also a little worried. Qin Mu didn't leave out any details when he spoke about the results of Eternal Peace's reform, the runes of the ancient gods' great Tao, Celestial Venerable Yu, and his own divine treasures. It felt as though he was settling his affairs in case he passed on. Shenghua was extremely serious when learning. Even though he was unable to cultivate Qin Mu's method of recreating a soul, and it was thus useless to him, he still learned it wholeheartedly. Qin Mu wanted to impart Brahma Buddha's Boundless Calamity Sutra to him, but this Emperor's Throne technique was very unique. When Brahma Buddha imparted the technique to him, he didn't teach him any scriptures. All Qin Mu did was take a nap, after which he could execute this technique naturally. Even if he wanted to, he was unable to impart it to Shenghua. Qin Mu could only leave it at that. He dispersed the dream state, and the two walked out of the large hall. Outside, only 6 days had passed. Your trip to the celestial heavens will be a dangerous one, and we don't know where the danger will come from. Cult Master, it's hard to predict whether you will survive this trip. Shenghua said, I know many people don't understand you. They think you're arrogant, audacious, and act without restraints. However, I understand you. What they see is your glory, so they think that you like to show off and create trouble, but they don't know the grave dangers you have to face, and neither are they aware of the sacrifices you have made. You constantly place your life on the line to fight for Eternal Peace's future. Qin Mu laughed. While it's dangerous to go to the celestial heavens, it's not entirely true that we don't have a path of survival. We do have that little hope for a path of survival, which is why I have to go to the celestial heavens. If I don't, Eternal Peace, as well as the other life forms, will have no hope at all. His eyes were clear as he said, Don't worry about me. If I die, the qi of the overlord body will be transferred to your body. Once you have my qi, you won't be beta anymore, you'll be a true overlord body. Shenghua snorted. Qin Mu continued, If you fail too, there will be a new overlord body, who will receive your qi, and so on and so forth. There is bound to be an overlord body that is smarter and stronger than us, capable of doing things we are unable to do. It's time to say goodbye, my Tao friend. A sense of heroism raged and surged within Shenghua's chest. He had the urge to fill the sky with a long howl, emboldening him with fierce passion. However, the education he received since young warned him against easily releasing or being swayed by his emotions. He suppressed this heroism and stopped walking. He didn't send Qin Mu off, afraid that he might not be able to control himself and end up being like Qin Mu, full of uninhibited heroism, free and easy. The longer he was with Qin Mu, the easier it was to be influenced by him. Husband, he said that is heading towards the celestial heavens, but does he know how to get there? Jin Yang walked over and asked. THG knows. He's going to find him. Shenghua held her by her waist, raising his head to look up at Red Deity's temporary imperial residence. He unhurriedly said, "The weight that Cult Master Qin carries on his shoulders is much heavier than mine. I didn't feel much in the past. However, this time, when he imparted his teachings to me, he told me that if he dies in the celestial heavens, the responsibility for reform will be passed on to me. Only then did I feel the heavy weight of responsibility he carries." Jin Yang leaned on his shoulder and said gently, "Cult Master Qin has toiled tirelessly. I haven't seen him enjoying a moment of leisure. Compared to him, we are much luckier." "That's right." Shenghua sighed ruefully. "However, I don't know how long these blissful days will last. I hope Cult Master Qin can come back alive. Only then can I be at ease." He paused for a moment and said, "Within the dream world, Cult Master Qin addressed me as Tao friend. When I descended into confusion and doubt, it was he who guided me out of it. However, I can also sense that he has his own confusion and doubt. Yet, I am unable to provide him a path out. He treated me as a Tao friend, but I am unable to help him." Jin Yang looked at him quietly. Shenghua gave a bitter smile. "I used to be a guest of high heavens, fully focused on Tao. However, he stirred my unyielding will, making me determined to surpass him. Hence, I participated in the reform of eternal peace. All along, I have been chasing him. If not for his encouragement, I would still be a fake god of the high heavens. Even if I had some accomplishments, they wouldn't be great. Because of his encouragement, I am where I am today. I am undeserving of a Tao friend like him." Jin Yang held his hand and smiled. "Husband, who do you think is smarter, Cult Master Qin or you?" "Me?" Shenghua said resolutely and without thinking, "Cult Master Qin may be very smart, but when compared to me, he is still a line worse." Jin Yang burst in laughter. "Since you are smarter than him, what harm is there in being his Tao friend? I feel that you aren't inferior to Cult Master Qin in all aspects. Husband only lacks Cult Master Qin's unrivaled drive and his display of abilities. You don't have his fighting spirit, one that is fearless to fight against the heavens and never concede defeat." Shenghua was stunned and hugged her. "The luckiest day of my life wasn't the day I met Cult Master Qin, it was the day I met you." Red Deity's temporary imperial residence. THG waved his hand, dismissing the gods of southern sky that were in his temporary imperial residence. He said, "Second brother already told me that Cult Master Qin wants to go to the celestial heavens and plans to borrow a path from me. It's fine, I shall go with you to the celestial heavens." Qin Mu raised an eyebrow, and was about to speak, when THG laughed coldly. "I'm not concerned about you. I'm concerned about my second brother's safety. We are sworn brothers and have made a pact of earth count. If he dies on this trip to the celestial heavens, I shall die with him." He was full of resentment, as he recalled how he got drunk in the Imperial Gate Divine Knife, and became sworn brothers with the Dragon Qilin. Qin Mu took a glance at the Dragon Qilin and thought, "This is strange. When did Fatty Dragon become so smart and sensible?" In the past, although he was very smart, he was too lazy to scare people. Now he knows how to take the initiative to share my worries and solve my problems. Unless. He glanced at Yang and saw her feeding the dragon Qilin, looking very serious. Qin Mu smiled and said, "Brother Qi, how do you plan to head towards the celestial heavens?" Qi Jui said, "For divine arts practitioners, we can directly ask the gods to send us to break through the world barrier. However, for this Yang." The dragon Qilin gave a cough and said, "Third brother, call her sister." The corners of Qi Jui's eyes twitched as he patiently said, "However, this sister Yang is a half-god of the numinous sky realm. If she wants to go to the celestial heavens, there are two ways. We either rely on the various emperors to pierce through the world barrier, or we borrow a boat from Red Deity. Since we aren't strong practitioners of the Emperor's throne realm, we can only take the option of borrowing a boat from my master." Qin Mu felt a little uncomfortable, and he was quite unwilling to ask Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu for a boat. The day he was surrounded by the celestial heavens, the four deities had joined forces to stop him, and Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu hadn't shown him any mercy. Although Qin Mu was able to understand Qi Xiaoyu's situation, and knew that she had a very elaborate plan that required her to be hard-hearted, he ultimately still felt somewhat uncomfortable. He wasn't a saint, not like Woodcutter. Saint Woodcutter was able to abandon all emotions and only do things in pursuit of his interests. He was able to make decisions after a calm and rational analysis of advantages and disadvantages. Woodcutter had never taught him before, so he was unable to be purely rational. Woodcutter had only taught Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. As for Qin Mu and Wei Suifeng, he had merely let them grow on their own and didn't pay any attention to them. Qin Mu collected himself and said, "In that case, let's go ahead and meet Red Deity. Master doesn't want to see you." Qi Jui continued, "When you were in High Heaven's divine sect, I already contacted her. Master said that she doesn't wish to see you, but she can let you borrow the Phoenix ship to use for some time. However, when you reach the celestial heavens, she will take it back. The Phoenix ship should be here soon." Qin Mu let out a sigh of relief. Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu was most likely feeling some guilt, and she was trying to avoid the potential awkwardness between them if they met. "Young master, the Phoenix ship is here." A god walked into the palace and bowed. Qi Jui took the first step and walked out. Qin Mu followed after him, his heart stirred, and he inquired, "Brother Qi, Red Deity is still in the primordial realm and hasn't returned to southern heaven." Qi Jui replied, "She hasn't returned. She said that she wanted to search for an enemy and arrest the scum named Li Yuran. That Li Yuran commits all sorts of evil. In addition, there are still the remaining dregs of Founding Emperor, which she has to stay behind to search for." Only then did he recall that Qin Mu had once mentioned that he was a descendant of Founding Emperor, and thus he felt a little apologetic. However, upon seeing Qin Mu's expression, his words didn't seem to have made him unhappy. Although he and Qin Mu had fought each other viciously countless times, their relationship was born out of these fights, and he was also full of admiration for Qin Mu. In addition, there was another layer of ties through the dragon Qilin. Thus, in his heart, he didn't think of Qin Mu as an outsider. The Phoenix ship was one of the few rare precious artifacts capable of freely crossing through the world barriers of the various worlds. The hull of the ship was forged with an unknown material. On the exterior of the ship, there were phoenix wings, and its flying speed was astonishing. Many times, when strong practitioners of the celestial heavens wanted to go to the lower bound, they would borrow this ship from Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu. Qin Mu followed Qi Jui up the ship. On board were thousands of celestial troops and generals of southern heaven who were controlling and driving the ship. This ship is a treasure of the Emperor's throne. Its speed is unparalleled, but it requires extensive magic power to activate. Thus, it requires more than 6,000 soldiers to activate it. Qi gave the order to head towards the celestial heavens. The more than 6,000 celestial troops and generals activated the Phoenix ship, which flew into the sky, slowly increasing its speed. On both sides of the hull, incomparably magnificent Phoenix wings gradually unfolded, giving off brilliant lights and vibrant colors, wrapping the entire ship in rays of light. The Phoenix wings had a myriad of brilliant colors. After unfolding completely, the wings slowly vibrated, and the speed of the Phoenix ship increased steadily. Qi continued, although my teacher's ship isn't the only precious artifact that can travel through the world barriers, it's the most comfortable one. On board this ship, one doesn't have to worry about being affected by the turbulence caused by space. The speed of the Phoenix ship increased tremendously, but it was extremely stable on board the ship. When all of the Phoenix wings of the ship vibrated together, its speed finally reached its maximum, and with a buzz, it vanished from the primordial realm. Qin Mu stood at the head of the ship and watched as it tore through space. Space resembled numerous strips of gorgeous lights, and the precious ship was traveling at an immeasurable speed through these strips of light. The speed of the Phoenix ship had exceeded what Qin Mu was aware of, making it evident that Red Deity Qi Xiaoyu truly had extraordinary abilities. Sakura Buddha had always wanted to cultivate to the Emperor's throne, even borrowing techniques from Brahma Buddha. However, the gap between Emperor's throne and numinous sky was akin to a heavenly moat. No matter whether it was knowledge or foundation, there laid obstacles that were impossible to overcome. Qin Mu couldn't help but exclaim in admiration at the speed of this ship. From this ship, one could see Qi Xiaoyu's abilities. Then he recalled the enmity between Sakura Buddha and Qi Xiaoyu, and he thought to himself, in the world, there are many strong practitioners of the numinous sky realm, but few strong practitioners of the Emperor's throne realm. Perhaps the biggest reason for this is that going from numinous sky to Emperor's throne is as difficult to achieve as climbing up to the sky. Sakura Buddha had created the Sakura scripture by himself. However, if his technique was compared to Brahma Buddha's boundless Calamity Sutra, the gap of knowledge and foundation between the two techniques wasn't one that could be bridged by cultivation. Although Qi Xiaoyu might be inferior to Brahma Buddha, she was still a lot more powerful than Sakura Buddha. The Phoenix ship traveled through space, and after an unknown period of time, it finally came to a gentle stop. It had traveled into the depths of space and arrived in the middle of a vast starry sky. Qin Mu stood at the head of the ship and looked out. The stars within the skies were abnormally bright and resplendent, and there were beautiful strips of light between each one, like chains that connected all of the stars within the starry sky. It was the real starry sky, not just a sky map. That's the Strength Heavenly Star, one of the 36 heavenly stars. In the center is Strength City, which is also known as the Jade Chilean Star. Qi continued, if you look at it from a different angle, you will be able to see that the Strength Star has the form of a Jade Chilean ancient god. Strength Star, sovereign of the star gods, was born from Strength City. The dragon Chilean got excited, and he laid at the head of the ship and looked out. So that's the birthplace of the ancestors of the Chilean god race. Strength Star Sovereign was born there. The Phoenix ship was traveling extremely fast, and very soon, they were facing the front of the Strength Star. Looking from a distance, the stars were interconnected by the star chains, and they precisely formed the shape of a Chilean. At the center of the interconnecting brilliant star chains was an extremely vast god city made of jade. Qi hesitated for a moment before he said, there are many species of Chilean. Strength Star Sovereign was a jade Chilean, the most esteemed species of Chilean. Apart from this, in the primordial realm, there were the spirits of the 5 elements of water, fire, gold, wood, and earth, which gave rise to the 5 great Chilean ancient gods. As for whether second brother is a descendant of Strength Star Sovereign, that isn't something that I would be able to know. The dragon Chilean's expression darkened. When he was born, he was already able to control the Chilean sacred flames. Evidently, He was of the bloodline of the primordial realm's fire Qin, and had no relation to the bloodline of strength star sovereign. The Phoenix ship traveled through the star clusters formed by the 36 heavenly stars, and they saw the various large-scale god cities that were located at the center of the respective stars: Leader City, Knowledge City, Leisure City, Brave City, Majestic City, Fierce City, and so on. The form of each star also varied. The star chains surrounding them formed the shapes of the various ancient gods. They were quaint-looking, vicious, and indescribably sinister and terrifying. The forms of the stars were also the forms of the ancient gods, so one could imagine that those ancient god sovereigns must have also looked like that. Those god cities are where the soldiers are stationed. THG continued, in this attack of the primordial realm, of the celestial troops and generals that were mobilized, most of them came from the various great god cities of the heavenly spirits and earthly fiend stars. The armed forces of the celestial heavens headquarters, as well as the 36 celestial palaces and 72 throne halls, weren't mobilized at all. Qin Mu felt his heart tighten. The celestial troops and generals from just the heavenly spirits and earthly fiend stars had already utterly defeated the primordial realm. The power of the celestial heavens was truly unimaginable. The Phoenix ship then flew by the clusters of the earthly fiend stars, traveling through the stretch of starry skies with no end in sight. Suddenly, they arrived in a shattered starry sky. Broken pieces of land and stars floated amongst the starry sky, and the Phoenix ship flew by the wreckage. Qin Mu looked towards THG and asked, "Brother Qi, what is this place? Why is the starry sky shattered here?" THG replied, "It's the blood rust zone of the celestial heavens." Blood rust zone. The blood rust zone is the ruins from the prehistoric period. It has existed for a very long time, since before the Dragon Han celestial heavens. I heard that it's from before the rise of civilizations. THG continued, "As for how it came about, I have only heard a few rumors. One of the rumors says that there was a civilization here during the ancient primordial era, but it was later annihilated by the ancient celestial emperor and his followers. Thereafter, it was the era of the ancient gods. Thus, the ancient primordial era is also referred to as the prehistoric period." The Phoenix ship flew by an enormous planet, which was extremely tranquil and revolved very slowly. It was only when the planet revolved to face them that Qin Mu realized that it was actually a skull. It was a skull that was massive beyond belief. There were many similarly massive skulls in the blood rust zone. They floated together with the destroyed stars around the starry sky, which was dull and without light. If one wasn't careful, they would bump into them. The Phoenix ship decreased its speed while traversing through this area. Qin Mu stood at the side of the ship and looked outwards. An enormous piece of land floated by the top of the Phoenix ship, and on that land, there were still some ruins from the prehistoric civilization. Qin Mu raised his head to look at it and saw that the palaces on the land were grand and striking. Tall and huge pillars swung by the top of the ship, and there were also imposing god statues on the land. Behind these god statues, there were enormous circular rings. These rings resemble the wheels of light that form at the back of one's head after one receives blessings from the ancient gods. Qin Mu was astonished. Having various wheels of light behind the head should have been some sort of tradition from the era of the ancient gods. When he returned to the first year of Dragon Han, he had seen that many ancient gods and half-gods had these sorts of wheels of light at the back of their heads. The most eye-catching amongst them were the 7 celestial venerables. The 7 celestial venerables had all received blessings from the ancient gods, and thus they had the most wheels of light and halos at the back of their heads. Celestial Venerable Yu, especially, had countless layers of abnormally complicated-looking wheels of light at the back of his head. After all, he had received blessings from all the ancient gods. Of course, it wasn't only the celestial venerables who had halos and wheels of light at the back of their heads. the ancient gods would also bless their own descendants. In the early years of the Dragon Han era, the ability to give blessings wasn't limited to the ancient gods. Half-gods with strong cultivation were also able to give blessings. After researching the runes of the ancient gods' great Tao and the blessings of the ancient gods, Qin Mu was also able to give blessings to others. To him, there weren't many secrets in the ability to give blessings. However, the god statues in this area of primordial ruins suggested that the tradition of ancient gods giving blessings wasn't started by the ancient gods, but was, in fact, something of the prehistoric civilization. Qin Mu questioned THG, the prehistoric civilization of the blood rust zone, could they cultivate? How did they cultivate? THG laughed. Cult Master Qin, I said that there being a prehistoric civilization was just a rumor. But rumors are just rumors and cannot be taken seriously. So why are you investigating this so seriously? Qin Mu was even more serious now. If one is serious enough, there are no affairs of this world that cannot be uncovered. Since the blood rust zone existed in the primordial era, and civilization once existed there, then the structures of this civilization must have areas where we can draw lessons from. It's worth exploring. We can stop by and do some research. THG didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Cult Master Qin, my teacher only let you borrow this ship to get to the celestial heavens quickly, not for you to roam about leisurely. Qin Mu laughed. We are just going to take a look, and it won't take much time. Brother Qi, aren't you curious about prehistoric ruins like this blood rust zone? Not at all. THG replied resolutely. Even though he said that, he still ordered the soldiers to slow the Phoenix ship down. With a grave expression, he said, Cult Master Qin, we can take a slow spin around this blood rust zone, but we definitely cannot stay here for long. After all, it's a prehistoric ruin, and we don't know if there are any dangers around. In this place, every year, there will be some reckless fellows from the celestial heavens who end up dead. Qin Mu nodded and smiled. Don't worry, I only want to take a look. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. He stared straight at a broken piece of land that was floating by and hurriedly retrieved a geographical map from his Daotai sack. He checked the map and raised his head again to look at that piece of land that was floating nearer and nearer. Brother Qi. Qin Mu chuckled. Can we stop the ship on that piece of land? My senior brother left something for me there. THG flew into a fury. You just said that you only wanted to take a look, and now you are taking back your words. Qin brat, don't think that just because you're close to my second brother that I'll let you do as you please. Back then, when I went to the lower bound on Black Deity's orders, it was to capture you. To tell you the truth, I have tolerated you for a long time. Qin Mu looked to the Dragon Chelin, and the Dragon Chelin coughed and said, Third brother, since Cult Master wants to go there to take a look, you should just let him. THG could barely suppress the anger within him, but he still forcefully pushed it back down. He replied coldly, If you die there, don't blame me. This map of yours, eh? He widened his eyes as he looked at the geographical map in Qin Mu's hands and then raised his head to look at the nearing piece of land ahead. With an expression of puzzlement, he asked, Why do you have a geographical map of the blood rust zone? You really have a senior brother who left something for you here. Part 367 and 368 end here. Thank you for watching.